All right, everyone, welcome to the Working Man's Kollel. We are embarking on a new chapter in Masechah Shabbos. We are about to start the 11th chapter of Masechah Shabbos, Perek HaZorek, where the Mishnayos now are going to discuss the unique ways that one would violate, God forbid, the prohibition of carrying on Shabbos, and we'll get to those details when we get to the Mishnah. As I mentioned last time, this is the last chapter in the section that discusses the laws of carrying on Shabbos. The next chapters, at least for the next 12, 13, 14, 15, about 3 chapters or so, we will be discussing the laws of the rest of the 39 malachos in more depth, and the ones that we haven't touched on yet in the first, the third, fourth, seventh, and 10th and 11th chapters. And then after that, we go into some of the rabbinic laws of Shabbos and some miscellaneous laws pertaining to the laws of Shabbos. But for now, we focus on the 11th chapter of Masechah Shabbos that we begin right now. Hazorik mirishus hayachid rishus harabim. So let's say instead of, we know that the prohibition of carrying on Shabbos is, as it's called, hotza'a mirishus l'rishus, carrying from one domain to another domain, right? So a transference of domain. So you go from a private domain, a private residence, which we learned, basically is a place with at least 3 walls, according to most Rishonim. Some Rishonim say 4 walls. It is at least, has walls that are 40 tfachim tall, and I'm sorry, 10 tfachim tall, and 4 amos in width, so about 40 inches tall, and about 6 square feet area. That is a rishus hayachid. That's a private domain, and then a public domain is defined by an area that is 16 amos wide. It extends across the entire length of the city without any dead ends. It is a place where the Rabbim go through it, that the public go through. They transverse through that area. According to some Rishonim, you need to have at least 600,000 people that transverse in that area on a daily basis. There's one wild opinion of the Aruch HaShulchan who says that in order to define something as a public domain, it needs to also have the name associated with it of being the main street. So this only, according to the Aruch HaShulchan, would apply to something that literally has, the title main street, or it is the main street of the city. Highways, the Ramban says, are clearly a public domain. And we discussed all of those laws, but that's what the malacha is. It's carrying from a private domain into a public domain, or vice versa. So now the Mishnah discusses, well, what if I don't carry through the public domain, but rather I throw an object from the rishus hayachid to the rishus harabim? So I am standing on the inside of my house, and my friend Billy is standing on the outside of the house, and I scream out to the street, I say, hey, Billy, catch! And I throw him the baseball from the rishus hayachid to the rishus harabim. What is the halacha? Have we violated the prohibition of hotzah? Or I just throw let's say I throw the trash from my window. I have a trash bin outside of my house, and my house is adjacent to a rishus harabim, and I drop the trash through, from the window into the trash can. Have I now violated the biblical prohibition of carrying from one domain to another domain? So the Mishnah says, so mirishus harabim l'rishus hayachid chayiv. You have violated this prohibition. If you were to throw something from one domain to another domain, you have violated this. This prohibition, and that's because, as the Bartenura explains, as he always does so eloquently, he says that it's because you've accomplished everything that is in the malacha of hotzah. right? The principal malacha, the principal act of labor of carrying from one domain to another domain includes where you pick it up from one domain and place it in another domain. You did that in this scenario as well. It was your strength that picked it up and also placed it down, right? The gravity taking effect of it, landing in another spot, or the inertia of you throwing it and then it landing in another place, that's all associated with you. It's like an extension of your hand. You are really the one that did it. You can't blame it on God that it was gravity. You did it, right? And therefore, since both of the conditions are met to violate carrying on Shabbos, you violate this prohibition even though you threw it and you did not physically carry it from one domain to another domain. However, the Gemara then gets into a machlokes, merishus hayachid l'rishus hayachid. But let's say I go from one private domain to another private domain, v'rishus harabim be'emtza. But I transverse from that private domain to another private domain with a public domain in the center. So, for example, Billy is my next door neighbor, and or my across the street neighbor, and from our bedroom windows we play catch all the time. And I say, I scream across the street, Billy, open your window, right? And we have a catch going back and forth across, Highway 52. We throw the ball all the way across, right? Work on our pitching. Says the Mishnah that this is a machlokes. Technically, did the ball ever land inside the Rishus Harabim? No, because Billy and I have fantastic aim, and we always land inside of each other's homes. So if that's the case, I never went from a Rishus Hayachid to a Rishus Harabim. I went from one Rishus Hayachid to another Rishus Hayachid. So what's the story there? So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Akiva mechayev. Rabbi Akiva says that it is chayev, you are liable. The Chachamim peturim. However, the Rabbi said, no, you are exempt. Rabbi Akiva thinks that you are liable. Why? Rabbi Akiva bases his opinion on a concept that he subscribes to. The concept he subscribes to is kluta kemisha hunchadamya, that if something is levitating in midair, so it's viewed as if it is huncha. It's as if it's settled on the ground beneath it. Okay? So if something is flying through the air, the entire time it's flying through the air, we view it as if it's on the ground. We view it as if it's on the ground. And therefore, when it passes through the Rishus Harabim going into Billy's house, it is viewed, according to Rabbi Akiva, as if it rolled across the street into Billy's house. It's viewed as if the entire time it is on its way into Billy's house, it's actually in the Rishus Harabim. It actually landed there the entire time. The only thing that's preventing it from landing there is the fact that, my inertia or, the momentum of the ball moving keeps it going. But the ball is viewed halachically as if it already landed inside the Rishus Harabim as it's passing through. But the rabbis say that no, you are pater. Now,
are the rabbis saying it's still usher to do it?
It's a rabbinic, it'd be a rabbinic violation. It'd be a rabbinic violation, but on a biblical level, it's pater. Now, this whole discussion between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim is where you actually remain within the space of the public domain. Meaning, when I throw the ball from my house to Billy's house and we're playing catch across the street, so the entire time we're playing catch, we are within the airspace of the public domain. But let's say I leave the airspace of the public domain. How would I do such a thing? So the Gemara tells us that the public domain, we know, as we just explained before, right? It has a certain width. It needs to have a certain amount of people transverse there. The Gemara tells us that there's another condition. The public domain only goes up to 10 tfachim high. That it only goes up 10 tfachim high. Anything more than that is considered to be its own domain. It's its own domain above that point. that once it's above, I'm sorry, not 10 tefachim, 10 amos. Let me just double check. It's 10 amos. Yeah, it's asar tefachim. Asar tefachim. So the Rishus Harabim only goes up to, in its airspace, 10 tefachim tall. Okay, 10 tefachim high. So anything that flies above that is considered outside the space of the Rishus Harabim. So this whole machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim is if you are flying it within the airspace of the Rishus Harabim. If it flew above that point, so let's say, Billy and I have the catch from our second story windows. So in such a scenario, that according to everyone, you would be pater in that scenario. So says the Mishnah the following: Ketzad. What are the cases we're talking about here? Shtei gezustarot zu keneged zu b'Rishus Harabim. Okay, so you have two balconies facing each other in the Rishus Harabim, mine and Billy's balcony. Hamoshet va'azorek zu mizo lezu. You throw or you pass from one to the next, pater. Okay, you are off the hook. Hayushtein bidiota achas hamoshet chayev. Okay, now the Mishnah says, however, if you are on the same side of the street, not across the street, neighbors, but you're on the same side of the street, and you pass over from one balcony to the next balcony, you're going to be chayev. However, if I throw from one balcony to the next balcony, I'm going to be pater. Again, this is because I'm above the 10 tefachim height. If I was below that, that would be subject to a machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. But when it comes to Moshe, though, if I pass it from one balcony to the next, so then in that scenario, I'll be chayev. Shekach haisa avodas haLeviim, because this is the way that the Leviim, the Bnei Kahas, remember we spoke about that the Bnei Kahas were the professional carriers. They were the ones that carried the Mishkan as Bnei Yisrael was traveling through the Midbar. And we know that Melecha Shabbos, that which is prohibited to be done on Shabbos, is directly patterned after that which was done in the building of the Mishkan. In that scenario, you will be chayiv because shekachaisa avodas haLeviim. The way that the Leviim carried is that they had shtei agalos. They had two wagons, zu achar zo, one after another on the same side of the street. B'Rishus Harabim, in the public domain, they were lined up. They weren't next to each other, but they were lined up one to the next. So therefore, when you pass in that kind of a way, so then you are going to be chayiv. However, if you were to pass over the Rishus Harabim from one balcony to the next, going side to side across the street, as opposed to on the same side of the street, in that scenario, you would be pater. Moshtin haksharim mizo lezo avalo zarkan. The way that the Levium would carry is that they would pass it from the beams from one wagon to the next. They would never throw them. Then the Mishnah ends off and it says, Chulias habor v'hasela shehen gevohin asara v'rachban arba. Let's say you have the you have the dirt from a bore, and you have a sela, you have a rock shehen gavohin asara that are 10 tefachim high, v'rachban arba, and are 4 amos wide. Hanota mehen v'nosa al gaban chayev pachos mikain pater. So if you were to take them from one to the other, you'd be chayev. However, if they're smaller than that, you'd be pater. Okay.
When they say the rachva arba, they're talking about both length and width?
No, just width.
So you need 3 dimensions.
No, height. Meaning yes, height, length, and width. Yeah, they're talking about length and width. Yeah. Okay. I want to discuss a little bit about what's the story with this Moshe over here. That when you transfer from one private balcony to another private balcony. So you are going to be chayiv. You're going to be chayiv in that scenario if they're on the same side of the street. If they're across the street, though, you're going to be pater. So hold on 1 second. If it's on the same side of the street, again, I'm transferring from the private domain into another private domain, passing over the public domain, right? In that scenario, if we're on the same side of the street, I'm chayiv. But if it's across the street, I'm going to be pater. Why? Ask many of the Rishonim, the Meiri. There's a parish on Masechah Shabbos called the Rosh Yosef. It's written by the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim also deals with this question. It seems so odd. We have a concept that we've discussed many times called avos and toldos. That there's an av and a tolda. There's a principal category of the malacha, and then there are applications of the av. Those are called toldos, which technically means like the offspring of the av, of the principle. So you have the principal malacha. In this scenario, it's hotzah, carrying, from one domain to another domain. And then you have the offshoots of that, the applications of that, which are toldos, which is like throwing, right? Where we said that if you're going to throw from one window to the next one, I'm going to have the catch with Billy, right? So Rabbi Kiva said I'm chayiv in that scenario, right? Because it's that when it's suspended in the air, it's as if it's lying on the ground. I'm chayiv because it's a tolda. It's an offshoot of the same malacha. The malacha is transferring by picking something up and carrying it from one domain to the next domain. That's the av. But if I accomplish the same thing in another type of a way, so then that would be called a tolda. Which is exactly what Rabbi Kiva says is the reason why if I throw it, I'm going to be chayiv. So 1 second. When it comes to throwing, so then I'm going to be chayiv. Why? Because it's a tolda. But when I pass it, we become so detailed. If I'm going to pass from one balcony to the next balcony on the same side of the street, that would be a tolda of hotzah, and I'd be liable. But if I'm going across the street, that's already too dissimilar from the av that I'm not going to be liable in that scenario. Why is it not just called a tolda? It should become an application of the same av. I'm accomplishing the exact same goal of moving from one domain to another domain, transferring its location, going from a private residence to a public space. Why does it matter that it's across the street versus on the same side of the street? What's the difference?
How can you have a street so narrow that it would qualify as a street?
The street, right. Meaning you're saying, well, hold on 1 second. A Rosh Hashanah is at least 16 amos wide, and last I checked, not even the Hall of Famers in NBA Hall of Fame have that kind of wingspan, right? So how is it possible then to ever violate this prohibition? Because, theoretically speaking, because you just don't carry across, right? So Rav Moshe Kazis gives your answer. He says no one ever passes things across the street. They throw things across the street, but they never pass things across the street. It just practically never happens. And if you were to come up with some sort of a scenario, wacky scenario that it does, so it's too strange, too dissimilar to the malacha. Exactly to your point. But I'll respond to that and say, my arms might not be so long, but I have a really good fishing rod, right? And you challenge a teenager to him and his friends to figure out a way to pass things from one house to another house across the street. It doesn't matter how wide it's going to be. They'll figure out a way to do it. If it's going to cause a little bit of mischief, they'll figure out a way to do it. So regardless of whether or not it's, Rav Moshe Kazis is taking a little bit of a different approach in how to define toldos. But at least the way that the Maggid Mishnah defines a tolda, which is, I think, the most conventional way to define a tolda, is that you accomplish the same goal in a little bit of a different way. That's exactly what going across the street would be. So why is it then that by going from one to, why going side to side would be a violation, but going across absolutely would not be? So the Meiri gives the following answer. The Meiri says that Moshe, which is, transferring from, from one to the next by extension of your arm, is in it of itself already a chiddush. Why is it already a chiddush? So he points to a Yerushalmi. Now the Yerushalmi over here discusses Moshe, and it talks about how Moshe is the exception to all malachas. The exception to all malachas. Every single malacha we learned, not last time, but the week before that, we learned that in order to violate the malacha, you need to do the whole thing yourself. Right? We had a whole 2 or 3 classes about that. Right? The concept of shnaim sha'asuhu, that when 2 people do the malacha together, so then that is not a violation of Shabbos, because the pasuk by the Karban Chata says me'im haaretz ba'asosa la bishgaga, that you need to do the malacha completely on your own. It can't be then that it's ha'osa as kula v'lo ha'osa es miktsasa, the language of the Gemara. That it can't be that more than one person are doing this malacha. If I'm going to violate the malacha, I need to do the whole thing myself. Assuming, as the Mishnah pointed out, we saw the Mishnah, except for one opinion, but according to most opinions in the Mishnah, except for the scenario where I can't do this malacha without someone else's assistance, right? But if I'm able to do the malacha without someone else's assistance, like carrying a pen, let's say, from the private domain to the public domain, and then another person comes along and does it with me, and we do it together, so then that is not called doing the malacha of carrying. I'm doing something and he's doing something, but neither one of us are actually helping the other person. And the pen's kind of getting there on its own from a halachic perspective. And therefore, we can't be liable for that. So that's the concept of shnaim sha'asu. So hold on one second. Moshe is a scenario of shnaim sha'asu. I extend my arm from my balcony to the other person's balcony and give him something. So if that's the case, so then why is it then that I'm going to be patur? I should. If that's the case, why am I chayav? I should be patur. I shouldn't be liable because I have more than one person involved. There's 2 people involved here. If there's 2 people involved, then by definition, that's not a violation of the malacha. So that is where the Meiri points out to the next line of our Mishnah. The Mishnah said, why am I going to be chayav for moving from one private domain to the next private domain? Says the Mishnah, because shekach haisa avoda salavim. The Mishnah goes out of its way to tell me because that's the way they did it inside when they were building the Mishkan. So then that's it. That's your answer. Because all malachas are patterned after the malachas hamishkan, the building of the Mishkan. In building the Mishkan, with regard to hotzah of Moshe, of transferring from one wagon to the next wagon, there was more than one person involved. That was the way they violated. That's the way that they did this act of this labor, was with 2 people. It wasn't with one person, even though theoretically they could have done it all on their own. Maybe it would have just taken longer, but they could have done it on their own. And therefore, by definition, if we're really going to be strict in paralleling ourselves after the Mishkan, so then we're going to be liable in that scenario, which is why also you're only going to be liable if they're lined up side by side. I'm sorry, one to the next on the same side as opposed to side by side going across. Because when building the Mishkan, that's the way they did it. They were lined up. They weren't side by side. And that's why if I go across, if I transfer across as the Meiri, I'm not going to be liable because that's just not the way it was done in the Mishkan. When they were building the Mishkan, that's not the way they did things. But you have to ask the question, though, Why is it that with regard to Hotzah, we're being so technical here of how they did it when building the Mishkan? And we've seen this a number of times already. Most recently we saw it in our last learning session. During the last year, we spoke about the concept of live weight, of chai nosei esatzmo, that a person has live weight. They carry themselves, which is why if I pick up someone and carry them from the private domain to the public domain or vice versa, I'm not going to be liable. Why? So Tosas asks, why? Why am I not liable for that? I transferred them. Okay, who cares if it was a person? Who cares if they were alive? At the end of the day, I made a transference from the private domain to the public domain or vice versa. So Tosas goes through a few different potential options. He dismisses all of them. And then in his third attempt, he comes to the conclusion to say, because when they were building the Mishkan, they only carried live objects, not inanimate objects. So comes along the Tosas Harash. Remember the Tosas Harash? He said, "Why? That's not a good answer. It doesn't need to be an exact pattern after what happened in the Mishkan. What's that called? That's called a Tolda. It's an offshoot of the Av. The Av is that they carried dead objects. The Av is that they carried side by side. The Av or lined up. The Av is that they had two people involved. But so what? Those are all just part of the way they did in the Mishkan. Everything else, an offshoot of that accomplishes the same goals, should be a Tolda and should have the same level of prohibition. That's where the Pnei Yeshua comes in. Pnei Yeshua, it's a Gavaldik Sefer. It's one of the most treasured Sfarim in the Beis HaMedrash, in all the yeshivas. I heard from Rav Shechter that he thinks, and he has learned enough Torah in his life to be able to make such a claim. He feels as though the Pnei Yeshua of any other Sefer is quoted more than any other Achron, any other posek that lived, let's say, 1600 and on. No one is quoted as much as the Pnei Yeshua, at least what Rav Shechter said. These are the Pnei Yeshua and the Nesivos HaMishpat, the Gaon Rabbeinu Yaakov Melissa. The two of them are quoted tremendously. The Pnei Yeshua, the history of how he came to write down his chidushim, his novel ideas on Shas, and the way that he defends Rashi against the attacks from Tosfos and other amazing analytics on the Talmud. So the history of how that Sefer came to be written is that he writes in the introduction, he says that I was giving, and one day, Bli Neder, I'll show you the introduction inside. It's unbelievable. He says, one day I was giving shir to my group of Talmidim in the Beis HaMedrash, and the shul, or the Beis HaMedrash that we were in, collapsed and came tumbling down on top of us, and me and all of my Talmidim were trapped underneath the rubble. So the Pnei Yeshua, in his injured state, lying under the rubble, made a neder. He said that I am making an oath, I'm making a vow, a promise right now that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu saves us from this and we come out of this unscathed, that I am going to make a neder that I'm going to publish my chidushim on Shas. And everything was fine. They all came out. Everybody was okay. Mamish, the building collapsed on them. Pnei Yeshua walked out as if nothing happened. And then he came. He writes in the introduction, he said, I have to come through on my promise. So that's how we have the Sefer Pnei Yeshua. It's an unbelievable work. So the Pnei Yeshua explains that why is it that we're so literal with regard to the Malacha of Hotzah. We're so literal. We take every single, we don't have that by any other malachos. We don't say, let's say, for example, by the malacha of cooking, right? So by the malacha of cooking, we know that cooking has, takes form in different shapes. There's cooking through the medium of a liquid. There's cooking through dry heat, roasting. There's cooking through frying, which is somewhere, in between, like baking through the medium of a liquid, and the poskim also on some level treat it like that it has the same type of intensity, like dry heat. you have baking, you have roasting, smoking meats, curing is also pickling is discussed in the poskim. What about pickling? Or you have many different types of cooking. Some of them the poskim treat as a deoraisa. Some of them are treated as a derabanan. The ones that are treated as deoraisa, like for example baking, is an iser deoraisa to do on Shabbos. In the Mishkan, when did they bake? Did they do any baking in the Mishkan to build the Mishkan? So in the daily services of the Mishkan, they did do baking, right? They had to bake the lechem hapanim, the showbreads that were always shown on the table inside of the Mishkan. Okay, so they had the showbreads, fine. They had to bake the shtei halechem for Shavuos. The part of the karbanos of Shavuos is the shtei halechem, fine. There was definitely baking that took place in the activities of the Mishkan. What about in the building process? So the Ramban says that yes, they did do baking. Part of the way to be able to check to make sure that the tcheles that is used in dyeing the curtains was true tcheles, was actually went through a baking process. Fine. So the Ramban thinks that there was baking. Tosfos says no, that they didn't do that when they were building the Mishkan. That baking was not a necessity when building the Mishkan. So Tosfos says no, baking was not done at all in building the Mishkan. So why is baking prohibited? Because cooking's prohibited. They had to cook dyes. So since cooking is prohibited, baking is prohibited. Because it's the same idea. It's taking something raw and making it cooked. You just did it in a different form. So then if that's the case, well, we should respond and say, no, that's not exactly the way it was done in the Mishkan, and therefore it should be completely permissible. No, that's called a tolda. But when it comes to the malacha of hotzah, we don't simply rely on that rule. And as long as it's similar enough that it gets to the same result, that's called the same level of prohibition. Why? Because hotzah is a unique malacha. Hotzah malacha gruahi. It's very strange. Everything about hotzah is strange. And the Ramban says, and Tosfos says, they say something very similar, even though they're vastly different, but just for all intents and purposes, they're similar enough for us right now. But basically what the Rishonim say, hotzah is strange. Why? Because you didn't actually accomplish anything creative. Has the object changed at all? No. All you did was carry something from inside to outside your house. It may have been more work for you to carry it from downstairs to upstairs. Right? The malacha is so strange. You didn't actually do anything. People don't even realize sometimes when they can have things in their pocket. Right? And they'll just walk around. Like the other day, I had a candy in my pocket, and my daughter starts fishing through my pockets, and she finds the candy. I didn't even realize the candy was in there. Right? But now I had to give it to her. What other choice did I have? Right? So people have things in their pockets all the time, which is why it's so nerve-wracking to have to go back and forth between a place without an Erev. I have tremendous respect. I always have. I said it always. I have tremendous respect for people that can live comfortably outside the Erev. It's a very difficult thing to do because you always need to be so cognizant of the thing. But you should just know, by the way, that the Mishnah Berurah discusses how those people that live in a place without an Erev, they really are more cognizant of Shabbos than people living within the Erev. Forget about just simply the malacha of hotzah, but it makes you more cognizant of Shabbos itself, which is why even inside an Erev, people have taken upon themselves that they will not carry, even though there's an Erev there. And the Erev is really there for emergency scenarios. There are such people like that because you want to stay cognizant of Shabbos because hotzah is so strange. Because of its strange nature, therefore, we have to be so, we have to follow the pattern of the Mishkan to the nth degree, because otherwise we have no way of knowing whether or not it's even a malacha, because there's no real pattern to this malacha of hotzah. And this Mishnah is really a fundamental Mishnah in that it really sums up the unique nature of hotzah and everything that we've been learning over the last number of months. We will probably have one more shir on the 11th chapter of Shabbos before moving into the 12th chapter in a couple weeks from now. It could be just a PSA. It very well could be, and you guys can get back to me personally if you would rather for the week, because that would bring us to the week before Tisha B'Av. If you'd rather just for that week before Tisha B'Av to learn through some of the laws of the fast day, and that we can pick up the 12th chapter after that period. I'm open after Tisha B'Av, and Mirz Hashem, we'll all be in Yerushalayim, and we'll learn the 12th chapter of Shabbos by the Beis HaMikdash. But I'm open to either. I'm open to starting the 12th chapter before we go dance in Yerushalayim, or starting the 12th chapter in Yerushalayim after the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. I'm open either way. Just let me know. And with that, we'll stop here. Shkoyach. I could stay on for 2 more minutes until I have to go for a couple of questions.